Sound matters. Be heard. Welcome to the podcast where you get exclusive behind-the-scenes tips to make your own show sound truly spectacular. This is Podtastic Audio.
Hey, what's happening? How are you doing today? How's your day going, huh? I am Chris of the world-famous Chris and Christine Show podcast. You can find out all about that show if you decide to look it up at chrisandchristineshow.com, and every single thing you want to know about us, Podtastic Audio, K2 Radio, and also with Christine Smith Designs. Her entire website link is right on over there at chrisandchristineshow.com. Think of it like our master hub for all things cool for the Chris and Christine Show network. Yes, we do have our very own network of podcasts. Well, actually, just me and Podtastic Audio and the Chris and Christine Show and K2 Radio. K2 Radio is not really a podcast. It's more like a radio station. But anyways, it's all on over there at chrisandchristineshow.com. Now, thank you once again for listening. I truly do appreciate you being here each and every week I release an episode. I do this podcast for you. If you have a podcast and you're trying to figure out the easiest ways and the best ways to make things sound really, really good without having to know all the extra knobs and mixers and consoles and all the radio station behind the scenes stuff, then don't worry about that stuff because you don't need to worry about that. Very easy ways to make sure your audio sounds fantastic. What I mean by fantastic, I'm talking about something that sounds good and good enough to where it can be heard no matter which area you're listening to your podcast, because you could be listening to it in a noisy car or going on a bike ride or walking in the park where there's noisy birds and dogs chirping in the background. Whatever it is, you want to make sure that your podcast audio can be heard throughout multiple situations. And that's what I mean by creating good, decent audio and some basic stuff too, like making sure the volume is at a certain level, making sure there's no background noise in the recording, just simple stuff that we all really take for granted when we create a podcast for the very first time using basic gear and equipment. Because you want to create an episode, you want to make it sound great, you want to make it sound amazing. But how do you do that when you just have your standard $20 USB microphone you bought from Amazon and maybe a standard $200 to $300 laptop you bought from a friend of yours, down the street, and you're like, let's make a podcast. Yes, you can do that. Yes, you can make a podcast. And I'm going to show you how to make it happen with just that gear and that gear alone. Now, it's nice to have expensive gear and it's nice to have, better microphones. That may enhance your sound quality a bit. It does. I'm currently using a Rodecaster Pro 2. Connected into that is this Rode Pod mic. Now, the Rode Pod mics I've been using for a while now. I've been using them before I got the Rodecaster, so I was using them with my old audio interface. The Pod mics are XLR only microphones, which means you have to connect them to an audio interface of some kind via an XLR connection. So like the Rodecaster has that, the PodTrack P4 has that, the old Behringer, where is that thing? Oh, it's up there on the top shelf. The Behringer I was using before, I was using that for many, many episodes before I even got the Rodecaster. That makes the audio sound very clean and easy getting it to your recording software, whether it's Audacity or Audition or Hindenburg or whatever Pro Tools or whatever you use. They actually record your actual audio. You want to make sure you have a very clean and clear signal from the start. Now, you probably already know this, but let's take it down to the basics. Have a very quiet environment when you record your podcast audio. So turn off all extra noisemakers that are in the room, perhaps. If you have your phone playing alerts and YouTube videos in the background, you may want to silence that. If you have a TV on in the room, you may want to turn that off. If you got a fan that's kind of noisy, and it's sitting next to your microphone, you may want to silence that too. So get the room as quiet as possible. I know it's not, sometimes you got to do what you got to do because you may have a fan on or a heater or air conditioning going, and it's going to be there in the background. And you're like, what do I do to eliminate that? Now, like I said, the easiest thing you can do is just turn it off. If you turn it off, then you don't have to worry about it. Just long enough till you do your recording, and then you can turn it back on. Just if you could just get through that 20 minutes or an hour or however long it takes you to record your episode, just get through that. Then turn your fan back on. Then turn all your stuff back on. If you can just do that. It's just for the part where you're actually recording your audio. And now, before we get too excited about what we're going to talk about today on Podtastic Audio, I just want to let you know that the Podtastic Audio podcast, which you can find at podtasticaudio.com, it's just my website. Don't worry, there's a link to that into the show notes. I put links to everything into the show notes. Very simple and very easy. But the Podtastic Audio podcast itself is going to be moving. In fact, as you hear this right now, it already had happened. It is moved over hosts. I moved from one host to another host. I did what is called a 301 redirect. Now, what does that even mean and how does it even work? So when you move podcast hosts, say you're on one host and you want to switch over to a different host, it's a very simple process. Basically, what you got to do is you got to tell the old host, hey, we're going to be moving to this new host. Please forward everything you have to this new address. It's like when you move and you get that forward your mail thing in the mail, and you're like, hey, the mail is, I moved from one house to the other house. You tell the post office, hey, don't send the mail to that old house. Send it to this new house. We're going to forward it over. We're going to redirect it to the new house. Usually they give you about a year of that happening till eventually everybody who sends you mail already kind of knows, like, hey, we're going to the new house now. Don't worry about the old house anymore. It's going to this new address. So essentially, it's kind of what's going to happen for me. My original host was Anchor. Now, the reason why I chose Anchor because it was free, easy to use, and most of people who have bad audio podcasts, most of them, I'm not saying you, but I'm saying most of them, were on Anchor. I was like, well, you know what? If they're already on Anchor, then I'll just go there and just see what all the fluff is about, and just maybe I can figure it out and show you, yeah, you can make decent sounding podcasts on Anchor. Actually, you'll make it on Anchor, but you host it on Anchor, just to kind of show you what it's all about. But now I am moving the entire show over to Libsyn. It is officially on Libsyn, and I just moved it over today as I record this. So by the time you hear this, it probably will be already on Libsyn. It's going to be there. So officially, Podtastic Audio will now be hosted on Libsyn. Now, I've been talking with a few of the people who work for Libsyn. In fact, so far up to date, I've had 2 people that work at Libsyn on this podcast. I've had Dave Jackson on the show. I've had Elsie Escobar on the last episode. She was on the show, and I have more coming down the pipeline. So I'm going to be working with the Libsyn team on figuring out how to do podcasting. We're going to talk all about podcasting, all kinds of fantastic stuff coming down the works. Don't you worry. It'll be amazing. So that is kind of why I'm jumping over to the Libsyn podcast hosting. And Libsyn is one of the big guys in the podcasting space. They've been doing it for a long time. They've been around a while. They are not the freemium as Anchor is, which everybody worries that Anchor may crash or fold, or who knows what the future of Anchor is. And if you want to start out doing podcasting, I say go right ahead and use Anchor. I've used it up to this point, and it's been fine. Go ahead, try it out, use it. Now, it's only for audio for the most part. If you want to do a video thing, you can do the YouTube thing, so on and so forth. Whatever, it's really up to you. But I'm going to, from this day forward, start using Libsyn. And like I said, I just set it up today. This episode will be the very first episode that I insert into the Libsyn feed directly through Libsyn, not the redirect. So now that we're talking about actually moving podcast hosts, I know that you may not have the best gear to record your podcast. You may just have your basic USB microphone like we talked about earlier. So how do you make that USB microphone and just that basic setup, like how do you make that sound amazing, like really good before it gets recorded into your audio recording software? I mean, I'm using Audacity right now, which you probably can use. It's very easy. It's free to use. It does a lot of powerful stuff. You can record directly into it. But there's not a lot of things that you can do like live, I notice, as you record your voice directly into it. So what you got to do if you want to do something like that, see, I have the Rodecaster Pro. Now, the cool thing about the Rodecaster Pro is that there's a lot of features built into the thing to do some audio processing on my vocals on this microphone before it gets laid down on the recording side of Audacity. Now, people talk about plugins and different programs and different software things and features and all kinds of crazy things people can do with the audio. But what do you do about if you already recorded the audio through your microphone, you laid it down into your DAW, this one being Audacity, and it doesn't sound that great because maybe your level was too low, or maybe there was a hissing in the background. Maybe you had it too loud and you were spiking. You couldn't figure out, how do I adjust this? How to make it sound good going into the recording? Now, if you have a Windows PC, I'm talking Windows 10, 11, 8, 7, whatever they're on now, 10, 12, I don't even know. I switched over from a Windows PC probably about a year ago, and I got this MacBook Pro I'm using today. I'm using a Mac. I'm on the Mac OS operating software. Now, there's one program I keep hearing time and time again. People are using this to create their podcast audio and make their audio sound good before it gets to their recording device, say Audacity, and that is voicemeeter. Now, voicemeeter, I had to double check on this. Voicemeeter is only available if you have a Windows PC. Now, voicemeeter, what it basically does, from what I understand, it's basically a virtual mixing console, like a mixing console you'd see in a studio or whatever. It basically takes that, reroutes the audio around from anywhere to anywhere. And I believe there's some recording functionality built into the Pro plans. But today we're only going to talk about the standard version of voicemeeter, which I do believe is free. There's not really any clear definition of a price point on this stuff. It just says it's you just have to donate, like donationware or something like that. I'm not exactly sure how that works. It sounds like if in a certain amount of time your subscription or your license expires and you have to pay something to get it back. I'm not too sure with that. But I don't have this. I cannot play with this, for the record. I'm on a Mac, so I have no ability to really dive into voicemeeter and give it a real run through, which I really would love to do that. All I'm saying is what they actually have posted here on the voicemeeter website. Now, they have 3 versions they have here. They have standard, banana, and potato. Potato is like their big daddy. It's got a bunch of features. I believe each one kind of piggybacks on the last one. So the banana can do everything the first one can do, plus more. The potato can do everything the first 2 did, plus more. Now, the standard, according to these specs they have here, what it basically does, it gives you 3 ins and 3 outs. So the inputs, it says you have 2 hardware and 1 software. So basically, say you have 2 microphones and software being a Skype call, maybe Zoom. I don't know when this was written, Skype. Okay, yeah, whatever. And then outputs, it says you have 2 hardware, identical A1 and A2, and 1 software via Skype. So basically what this does is that with a little bit of enhancements on your audio, there's a few features we'll get into in a second here of changing the audio sound before it gets out to where it needs to go. And then you basically have to reroute the audio where you want it to end up. So in this case, you want it to end up in Audacity because that's where I'm recording this, this podcast today. So if I was running it through voicemeeter, I would pull my microphone up into voicemeeter, find the microphone, of course, find the output, which would send it over to Audacity, I would assume. In Audacity, you would have to pull it up and say, this would be the input. And then you'd hit record, and then you do that. But before you get there, you essentially could have a Zoom call or a Skype call or something like that coming through voicemeeter, and you'd have to separate the 2 and figure out where each one is going and then direct it all into Audacity to lay down your final actual recording. So on the basic voice effects, it says here, you do have a color panel EQ, 3D panoramic control. It must be some kind of like virtual knobs. It says it's for binaural effect. Maybe you can change the audio going left and right, front, center, that kind of thing. It says it's got another compressor and noise gate effect. Now, this is important because having a noise gate that you can happen in real time is also important, but you can still do this kind of stuff after the fact. I know that the Rodecaster Pro has a noise gate filter built into the thing. As I talk, my voice goes in, it blocks out the noise. So you may not be familiar with actually what a noise gate actually does. Now, what a noise gate is, think of it as a screen door for your house or maybe your back patio, right? So you want the nice cool air to come through because it's a nice day outside, right? Nice spring day or whatever. Nice air to blow on through from the outside to the inside, but you do not want any of those bugs or critters or squirrels to come into the house, right? So you got the screen door there to block all that junk from coming in. So as the air blows through the house from the outside, all that junk, all the bugs and dirt and stuff stays outside. That screen door is like the noise gate. Now, like the noise gate on the Rodecaster and the noise gate on this device, I'm assuming there's settings on the thing so you can go a finer noise gate or a more loose, relaxed noise gate. So a finer noise gate would be something like, instead of a screen, you'd use like a t-shirt or something. Wind will blow through that t-shirt, but not very well, right? Or on the other side of that, on the more relaxed side of the noise gate would be something like a chain link fence, right? I mean, obviously, wind's going to blow through the chain link fence. Bugs are going to go through the chain link fence, but dogs and squirrels and things like that may not. It blocks some of those things. So you have to kind of fine tune it. How much of you do you want to go through and how much of other things if you balance it out correctly? That's essentially what a noise gate really does. Now, you have to be very careful when you use a noise gate because sometimes it'll cut off things that you say and it won't sound quite right. And it comes with a 3-band graphic equalizer on the virtual input. Now, the virtual input must mean your microphone, I'm assuming, or any other kind of device you've got going into it. Now, it's a very simple setup for the standard edition. And you go to the Banana edition, it's got some more features in there. It looks like it's got 3 hardware in, 2 software. It's like 5 in and 5 out, it says here. So you got 5 inputs and 5 outputs, all virtually, all on your computer software. It looks like a console when you open this thing up, at least in the picture here. It looks like a console where you can fine-tune the audio for each track and each person and then direct it where you want to go. All of these things, basically what they do is they allow you to, yes, you can record directly through it. You can record onto it. You can bring in stuff to it. It's basically like a full-blown mixing console studio right on your computer. But the difference is between the actual Rodecaster I'm using right now and something like this is that this is required to use your computer and your computer software and your computer hardware. So whatever kind of computer you have, I would just assume that even if you have a really, really fast computer and it's a really fast like GPU, CPU, and it's like the best or whatever, you're putting a lot of strain on that, plus using this high-powered audio equipment like this at the same time, because your computer is also running other things. I mean, your computer is running your monitor. It's running all of your background stuff. The computer, even if you're not doing anything with your computer, like nothing at all, there are so many processes going on in the background that your computer is physically doing. Now, if you try to put on something crazy like this onto your computer, if it's an older computer that may not be able to handle this kind of stuff, you're probably going to have problems because it's probably going to overwork it. The cool thing about the Rodecaster is that it does all that stuff I just mentioned, that does everything kind of voicemeeter kind of does. It does all that stuff built into the console. And the console itself has its own computer built into it, its own full-on CPU, GPU, whatever computer stuff built into the Rodecaster Pro. So it alleviates all of the stress off of the computer itself. The computer can do the computer stuff and not have to worry about it so much. The Rodecaster Pro 2 is handling all that stuff. It's got a very powerful processor built into this thing to be able to do effects and do all that crazy, fantastic stuff live in real time. And the Rodecaster Pro 2 is one thing I would recommend getting. If you don't want to get an actual like console thing for your desk or your computer, for your podcast, you can try voicemeeter. Now, the banana and the potato looks like you got to pay for those. I believe the standard edition is free. Now, for the record, again, I have not used it because I am on a Mac. Now, there's one software on the Mac that I recommend everybody getting, and that is the Audio Hijack. I have a copy of Audio Hijack, and I have a copy of Loopback, although I haven't really used it like at all. I've only used the Audio Hijack. Now, what Audio Hijack essentially does is it takes audio from source 1 and directs it to source 2. So, and you can record it and do all kinds of different things. It does recordings, and it does, it basically moves the audio around and lets you record basically anything that is playing through your computer, like anything at all, from any application, from any source. You can record it with Audio Hijack. So, for example, if you're recording, I don't know. One of the easiest ways I've used Audio Hijack is if you want to take sample clips from YouTube or things of that sort, it's very easy to hit record on Audio Hijack, and you got a very clean, a very clear copy of whatever audio was being played through Audio Hijack, and you got it saved on your session there, and it's all great, and it sounds great. And then once you have that audio, it's up to you to do whatever you want to do with it. You can edit it in Audacity or GarageBand or whatever program you use. You can take it, use it. It's yours. Ta-da. Very simple, very easy. I love Audio Hijack. There is a version, something similar to that on Windows, but I do believe this voicemeeter does also do something very similar to what Audio Hijack can do. So if you need to copy stuff off YouTube or whatever, samples of different things for your podcast or just for your safekeeping, try voicemeeter and see if there's a way that you actually can copy things that are playing live in real time. I think you can. Once you get to like the potato version, I believe there's lots of different ways you can do that. In fact, it looks like it actually gives you a soundboard that you can upload audio clips and play things live in real time and direct them anywhere you want. Like say you've got sound coming in from multiple sources and you have it going out to a recording and you have it going out live stream, say OBS or Twitch or whatever you like to use. Something like this, voicemeeter potato, may be able to handle all that stuff and direct all your audio where you need it to go. That is where it gets very complicated. And I wish I could have a version so I could look at it and actually play around with this thing and get my feet wet with this voicemeeter. Unfortunately, since I do not have a Windows computer, I can't play with this and show you what it actually does because I don't know. All I know is what I'm reading right here, right off their website. I do know that some podcasters out there have shown me that they have used voicemeeter and they highly recommend it to make their audio from their voice sound very good before it gets to the actual recording. Now, remember, however you record your podcast, you always can enhance your audio after it's been recorded, but it does help if you have a decent sounding recording from the beginning. Make it sound good from the start. And I will put links to all of this into the show notes today of today's episode, so you can click down and check it out for yourself. Check out voicemeeter if you like that. If you want to get a copy of Audio Hijack, you can go ahead and do that. And like I said, links to all of that will be in the show notes today. And I want to say thank you once again for being here today. If you found any value from this episode or any of my podcast episodes, please leave me a rating and review on the podcast player of choice. You go right ahead. You can follow me along with me at podtasticaudio.com. And if you need some special help figuring out things with your podcast, if you want some one-on-one personal coaching with me, I do have a limited space available, and I have started podcast coaching with Chris. A link to that is in my website. I believe it's podtasticaudio.com/coaching. Try that out and hit me up. And if you decide to pick a time with me, there will be a list of questions I'll need to answer for me. Be basic things like, what's your podcast about? Who is it for? How long have you been doing it? Where can I find it? Is it a business or a hobby? Just simple questions so I have a better understanding of what the goal is of your podcast. And I will personally help you make sure that your show sounds amazing. I'll do the best I can guiding you to make sure you have a very, very spectacular podcast. So thank you once again for listening. And if you need help with anything, hit me up. I'm all about helping you guys out, helping out with podcasters. And until next time, you keep on making fantastic audio, and I'll check you out next week.